Okay, bravo, Croydon Council. Truly inspirational stuff, because you've just achieved something very few councils manage. You've been handed a full judicial slapdown by the High Court. And Mr. Justice Pepperall looked at your 6 low-traffic neighbourhoods and politely concluded that they weren't really about cleaner air or safer streets. No, they were basically a money-grabbing scheme dressed up as environmental policy. Because apparently the new definition of saving the planet is treating your residents as though they were cash machines. You installed these LTNs during the pandemic as temporary trials, temporary in the same way that airport security is temporary. Then, as a shock to no one, they became permanent. And whilst telling the residents that this was about safety and clean air, the council was quietly penciling in 10.7 million in fines into the budget. 10.7 million, which is a fascinating environmental strategy. Net zero, but profitable. And then we get to the best part. The Mayor, Jason Perry, a man who campaigned vociferously against the LTNs, promised to rip them out on day one, and then he got elected, sat down in the big chair, opened the accounts, and realised that the council's budget now depended heavily on that little ping from the ANPR cameras catching drivers. So suddenly, it became, sorry voters, turns out we need to carry on fining you. And here is the twist. Those exact complaints were quoted in court by the judge as proof that the real purpose of the scheme was the money. Not safety, not health, not to corral behavioural change, the money. And by that time, Croydon had already taken over £1 million in fines. Drivers basically treated as mobile piggy banks with number plates. But the High Court saw straight through it. The scheme was squashed, declared improper and unlawful, and campaigners are now demanding their money back. So congratulations, Croydon Council, bankrupt 3 times and now officially told off by a High Court judge for turning traffic management into a predatory side hustle. And across London, Hackney, Islington, Haringey, Lambeth, Waltham Forest and others, LTN fines have at times raked in tens of millions of pounds a year, and with them endless disputes, arguments about traffic simply being pushed onto neighbouring roads, arguments about how cripplingly slow bus journey times are, arguments about how the schemes have not reduced private car use, arguments about emergency access delays, and now arguments about the sheer cheek of councils quietly building penalty income into their budgets. What is to say, with all of these schemes, once enforcement becomes a revenue stream, the incentive quietly shifts. Suddenly the goal isn't compliance, it is collection. And in the case of Croydon, a High Court judge effectively said the quiet part out loud. If the dominant purpose of a traffic scheme is milking motorists to balance the books, it's unlawful. Simple as that. So next time, maybe try balancing the books without ambushing your own residents with traffic cameras, because if your environmental policy only works when people accidentally break it, it isn't an environmental policy. It is a stealth tax. There are LTN advocates out there absolutely gutted by the ruling. They are already saying, don't worry, once the wording is tidied up, the schemes can be reinstalled. In other words, the problem isn't the policy, it is the paperwork. Just fix the legal phrasing, move the commas around a bit, and the cameras can start flashing again. No mention about the council abusing its powers or acting unlawfully, which they would be apoplectic about if a council introduced measures that limited them in some way. Which tells you something quite revealing. For some people, it isn't really about the principle. It is about the outcome they wanted in the first place. Principles for them, in this case, really do not matter.